Go. We are in cold. We are in Fate and Destiny again. Rabbi Soloveitchik is the speaker here, and I hope you're ready for what he's about to say. We were talking about evil. Rabbi Soloveitchik has informed us that we should not be getting involved in the theological problem of the purpose of evil. That was teleological. I learned a new word here, so I know how to use it. But it's we're not supposed to ask why it happens. Rather, only we should be asking what we can learn from it. And that is how we can improve ourselves. We should ask it as a halachic question. What is God trying to get us to do? How are we supposed to change? And he said furthermore, and that was the last paragraph we read, if we just allow it to, we just have the suffering, but don't go through this sort of asking the question of what we can learn from it, then we have frittered away our opportunity, and we were like a blind, and it was a grave indictment against us. So we're on the last paragraph on page 9. It says, Judaism has deepened this concept by combining the notion of the mending and the elevation of suffering with that of the mending and the elevation of divine kindness, divine chesed, that's kindness. God's acts of chesed, Judaism declares, are not granted to man as a free gift. Rather, they impose obligations. They make ethical, halachic demands upon the beneficiary. To be sure, the overflow of divine chesed derives from God's open, superabundant, and generous hand, but it is not an absolute gift without conditions or restrictions. That's right. If we get rich, and that's God's beneficence to us, fine. We have obligations that come with it. It's not just a free gift. It's not ours to go with. It's not what we call it. It's not an entitled. We're not entitled to it. The bestowal of good. Sorry? I did that just for you, Rabbi. Okay. The bestowal of good is always to be viewed as a conditional gift, a gift that must be returned, or as a temporary gift. When God endows a person with wealth, influence, and honor, the recipient must know how to use these boons, how to transform these precious gifts into fruitful, creative forces, how to share his joy and prominence with his fellows, how to take the divine chesed that flows toward him from his infinite divine source and utilize it to perform in turn deeds of chesed for others. A person who is not brought by the divinely bestowed bountiful good to commit himself absolutely and unreservedly to God perpetrates a dire sin, and in his wake he finds himself in the very difficult straits which serve to remind him of the obligation he owes to God for his gift of chesed. So if and when God gives us our riches, then we have to do what we're supposed to do. We view it as a gift from God, and therefore God gave me directions as to what to do with the money, Meiser and so on and so forth. I have to do that. If I don't do that, and I just say it's mine, 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 with the power of my hands, I've done everything. So we don't recognize God in that equation. So then God is going to give us sin to wake us up. He's going to give us troubles to wake us up. Not sin. The sin was we didn't recognize from God. So he's going to give us headaches, and that's supposed to bring us back. Our great Tanaic masters have taught us a man must pronounce a blessing over evil just as he pronounces a blessing over good. In the same way that God's goodness imposes upon the man the obligation to perform exalted, sublime deeds and demands of either the individual or the communal original creative actions, so too do afflictions require a person that he improve himself, that he purify his life, if he was previously not prepared to action when God's countenance shined upon him, when God's chesed overflowed toward him. For there are times when a person is called upon to mend through his afflictions the flaws that he was afflicting upon creation. You hear that language? It's an amazing thing. Well, we're not doing what God is, when God gave us something and we didn't follow through with those gifts, then we inflicted, then we're inflicting upon the creation itself. When God extended peace to him like a river. If you go to Isaiah, it's talking about the last chapters. And it's saying, if the Jews repent, then I'll give them everything. All they have to do is follow me. And it'll be like a river, constantly flowing. So the awareness of the requirement to commit oneself entirely to God and to understand the understanding of one's obligation to purify and to sanctify oneself from precisely out of the midst of one's suffering must shine brightly in the soul of the person when he finds himself in the straits and inquires into the meaning of his very existence. At that very moment, he is obliged to mend his unfeeling heart, the moral callousness that caused him to sin while he was yet standing in the great expanses. In a word, man is obliged to resolve not the question of the causal or the teleological explanation of suffering, but in all of its speculative complexity, but rather the question of the rectification of suffering in all its halachic simplicity. He does this by transforming fate into destiny. Remember, fate is passive, destiny is omniactive. Elevating himself from object to subject, from thing to person. That's what he's going to do. That's what he wants us to do. Everybody set with that, right? Okay? Now we're going to look at the book of Job. Just to give you background so you don't get lost here. The Gemara in Baba Batra has a very big argument as to when Job was around. Some people say he was in the time of Abraham. Some people say he was in the time of Pharaoh. Some people say he was in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, and so on and so forth. It's a whole argument as to when he was alive. According to the book of Job, if you open up the book of Job and you go to the very last page, it says he lived 140 years. He's not living like Chanoch. He's not Enoch. Who's the guy? Enoch is one who is taken up, right, after 365 years? In the beginning of creation. Enoch. Okay, whatever. He's not Elijah that comes back. He's living 140 years, according to the straight text. But the problem is, when does he live? Rabbi Soloveitchik is taking every opinion and putting it together here. So, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we go through it. So let's not get lost in the fact that he's using all of those different time periods. Just accept that he is living in the world of the Gemara and suspending reality, if it will. Again, you have 140 years. How you're going to parcel that out is up to you. But it's so he's going to use all those different time periods to make the point. Okay? I'm just giving that one warning because I don't want somebody to say, how could it be that he was in this place and that place? He doesn't live forever. He's only 140. According to Pshat, he's only 140 years. If there's some other midrash I'm not aware of, by all means bring it up. But here's what happens. Consider, again, the book of Job. Consider, this was precisely the answer that the Creator gave to Job. As long as Job philosophized like a slave of fate regarding the cause of and reason for suffering, as long as he demanded of God that he revealed to him the nature of evil, as long as he continued to question and complain, asking why and wherefore afflictions befall man, God answered him forcefully and caustically, posing to him the very powerful and pointed question, do you know? This is chapter 38. So this is when Job has gone through all the arguments with his friends, and he's saying God doesn't know everything, or whatever the case is going to be. He never blasphemes God, but he keeps saying, I was a good guy, did everything I was supposed to do, and yet God afflicted me. It's not my fault. And they're all arguing with him. Well, you were, if you go through the book of Job, it's 40 chapters of this argument 40, yeah, around 40 chapters of the argument. And what they're doing is they're going through every possible excuse of why God does things. They're looking for the purpose of suffering. That's what they're doing. And they're saying that he must have done something. It's always him, always him, always him. You had to do something to deserve this. Okay? And he's saying, no, I didn't do anything. So that they're asking the question, why did this happen? Fine. So God finally, is from the tempest, says, do you know who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up now loins like a man, for I demand of you and declare you unto me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Famous question. Declare if you have the understanding. Do you know the time when the wild goats of the rock bring forth? Or can you mark when the hinds do calve? In other words, he's asking Job all these questions that is impossible for Job to answer. That's all. So now Soloveitchik says, he's explaining, if you do not even know the ABC of creation, how can you so arrogantly presume to ask so many questions regarding the governance of the cosmos? However, once Job understood how strange and inappropriate his question was, how great was his ignorance, once he confessed unashamedly, therefore have I uttered that which I understood not, things too wonderful for me, which I knew not. The Almighty revealed to him the true principle contained in suffering, as formulated by the halacha. God addressed him as a man of destiny, not of fate, and said, Job, it is true that you will never understand the secret of why. You will never comprehend the cause or the telos of suffering, But there's one thing that you are obliged to know, the principle of mending one's afflictions. If you can elevate yourself via your afflictions to a rank that you had hitherto not attained, then know full well that these afflictions were intended as a means for mending both your soul and your spirit, Job. When my loving kindness overflowed toward you, in a manner described by the verse, behold, I'll extend peace to her like a river. When you were a prominent and influential man, and it says, and this man Job was the greatest of all the people of the East, you did not fulfill the task that my abundant loving kindness imposed upon you. I hope everybody here is ready for what's about to happen, because we are all, I would say that Soloveitchik is talking to every single person here, just using Job as a battering ram, but just be prepared, okay? True, you were a wholehearted and upright man. You feared God, and you shunned evil. You did not use your power or wealth for bad. You dispensed a great deal of charity. I give more than 10%, as the argument will go. I put on righteousness, and it clothed itself with me. My justice was a robe and a diadem. Nor were you ever loath to extend your help and to support the needy, but you came to their aid in times of distress. You gave money to the soup kitchens. You're doing all these things. But I delivered the poor that cried, the fatherless also, that had none to help me, Job said. However, and here's the thing, however, in two respects, you were lacking in that great attribute of chesed, of loving kindness. And again, how do we always define loving kindness? Loving kindness is defined as an act that we don't want to be paid back for. That, like burying the dead. I don't want people to bury me, so I don't want to be paid back. So that, if I go to Bika Cholim to visit the sick, again, I don't want to be sick. I don't want people to pay me back. If I do some other type of chesed, it's not loving kindness. I do something for you. I mow your lawn. You mow my lawn next. It's just, that's something else. But here he's saying loving kindness. You were lacking in this chesed. One, you never assumed your proper share of the burdens of communal responsibility and never joined in the community's pain and anguish. That's a harsh statement, but that's what he's saying. Nor did you ever properly empathize with the agonies of the individual sufferer. So you could sympathize all you want, but you never put yourself in their place. Which again is a harsh, and that's what I'm saying. I think that Soloveitchik was talking to us, using Job, but he's saying, one, you're not sharing the proper burden, and you don't, like I said, you give your money, but you're not really getting involved in the pain and anguish of the community. And number two, you're not empathizing with everybody. And then he goes further, as a kind, good-hearted person, you took momentary pity on the orphan. You were very wealthy and could afford to give substantial charitable contributions without straining your financial resources. However, chesed means more than a passing sentiment, a superficial feeling. Chesed demands more than a momentary tear or a cold coin. Chesed means to emerge with the other person, to identify with his pain, to feel responsible for his fate. And this attribute of chesed you lacked in your relationship with the community and with the individual. You were, and here, like I said, this is why I told you that he's going with the Gemaras. You were a contemporary of Jacob, who struggled with Lavan and with Esav and with the man at the ford of Jabbok. That's the angel that he fought with. Did you seek to help him and offer of your counsel and wisdom? Who was Jacob? A poor shepherd. And you? A wealthy and influential man. Had you accorded Jacob a proper measure of sympathy, of caring, had you treated him with the attribute of steadfast loving kindness, then he would not have had to endure so much suffering. By the way, I'm going to jump to Talmud Devorah. Talmud Devorah, in one of the ways it says you have to imitate Hashem, it uses an example of, if you see a poor person on the street, do you love him like you love the rich person? In other words, you talk to him. When I see a rich person, I go to that rich person. I want to be around him or her. He's like the Pavarotti. What's it called? Paparazzi. I want to be like the paparazzi. I want to hear every word he says. If he has millions, he must know so much. And I want to endear myself to that person. And yet this other poor schlepper on the street, the Talmud Devorah says, he's more loved by God, the Talmud Devorah says, because he has all the afflictions. Hashem is afflicting this person. And therefore, I should want to be with that person just as much, because if just this flip of the switch, that person would become rich, I would want to be with him too. So it's not a matter of how much money I have that should be driving me to this person. It's just my compassion, my desire to care about human beings. That's supposed to be driving me. And that's why he's making, I think that's where Rabbi Soloveitchik is coming from. He obviously told me Devorah, so it's, I think that's somewhat, the Musar is influencing this speech a lot. And so, you lived during the time of Moshe and were numbered among Pharaoh's advisors. This one is what we all know. Everybody likes to put Job in Pharaoh's time as one of his the court advisors. Did you lift a finger when Pharaoh decreed, every son that is born shall you cast into the river? When the taskmasters worked your brethren with vigor, with rigor, you were silent and did not protest, for you were afraid to be identified with the wretched slaves. To slip them a coin, fine, but to intervene publicly on their behalf, out of the question. You have to hear, it's unbelievable what he's attacking here. Okay, we all like to give, the little coins that we give.
Comfortable, Hester.
Comfortable. It's very nice. Look, I do my duty. I give you what I have, but to go out of my way to help the downtrodden, to get involved in that, I'm not going to do that. I'll go to a rally. I'll go, whoa. But to actually go onto the front lines, no, I'm not going to do that. To serve, it's interesting. One thing that I like that Sababa did was they used to bring, they may still do it. It was to bring the kids to a soup kitchen and to make them serve. To see the people serve. At least you're getting to know that person. Not that you have a conversation, but you're seeing the other side of life. You're not just giving food to the food pantry, and you'll never see those people. But here you actually have to be involved with that. That I actually, I thought that was a very powerful message to the kids. That's part of it too. You were fearful lest you be accused of dual loyalty. You were okay. So that was Moshe's time. So he wouldn't get involved because here I'm Egyptian. If I started fighting for the Jews, dual loyalty, you're not going to like me. Fine. You were active during the generation of Ezra and Nehemiah, and those who went up with them from Babylon. You, Job, with your wealth and influence, could have significantly accelerated the process of Yishuv Haaretz, of the settling of the land of Israel and building the temple. However, you were deaf to the historical cry of the people. You did not storm and protest against the Sanballats. That was the Samaritans. Sanballat was the leader who, if you go back to Ezra, he was the leader who was trying to stop Ezra, who condemned Ezra for everything he was doing, who got armies together to try to stop them from rebuilding the walls, and so on and so forth. That's why he's a major enemy. And the other Jew haters who sought to destroy the small Jewish community in Judea and thereby extinguish the last glimmer of hope of God's people. What did you do with those who went up from Babylon, when those who went up from Babylon cried out from the depths of pain and despair? The strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we were not able to build a wall. You stood by idly. You did not participate in the struggle and the suffering of those who fought for Judaism, for the land of Israel, and for the redemption. You never offered a single sacrifice on their behalf.
Was Job Jewish?
No.
So what the hell? What's God's beef?
God is saying, because you were seeing everything that's going on, and you offered only on your, as he's going to say. Remember, in the book of Job, it says, when his sons would, after every Sunday, I guess, he would offer sacrifice on behalf of all his sons in case they did a sin against God. So he's saying, you were willing to do it for your family. How about somebody else? You don't have to be Jewish to care about the other people. I gave you gifts. You have to do it. You have to do what's proper. So he says, right. You were concerned only about your own welfare. You would pray and offer burnt offerings only for your own behalf. And it was so, as it says. And it was so when the days of their Job's sons feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, rose up early in the morning, and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, it may be that my sons have sinned and blasphemed God in their hearts. So he's using that as the proof. Did you ever once offer a prayer on behalf of a stranger in the spirit of sharing in his grief? No. Don't you know, Job, and now we're going to get into what prayer is. This is also a fascinating thing. Don't you know, Job, that prayer is the possession of the community as a whole, and that an individual cannot approach the king and appeal to him and present his request before him unless he redeems himself from his isolation and seclusion and attaches himself to the community. So here's here's Rabbi Soloveitchik trying to get a minyan. Okay? Have you forgotten that Jewish prayer is recited in the plural? A man should always, as the Gemara says, a man should always associate himself with the congregation. That Jewish prayer means that one soul is bound up with another soul, that stormy and tempestuous hearts merge and blend. You did not know how to utilize the formulation of prayer in the plural as fixed by the nation in order to include yourself among the many and in order to bear the yoke of your fellow man. Job, if you but wish to learn the teaching of the mending of one's afflictions, You must first apprehend the secret of prayer that brings the I closer to his fellow. You must first be able to recite clearly the authentic text of prayer, whereby the individual partakes of the experience of the many. And you must first understand the idea of chesed as it is embodied by the prayerful person who rises above his individual uniqueness to achieve a sense of communal unity. You cannot discharge your obligation by merely dispensing a few clattering coins from amidst the abundant wealth which with you have been blessed. Only through prayer fraught with the experience of a shared communal suffering will you be redeemed. You did not understand the teaching contained in loving kindness, and you frittered away the blessing which I bestowed upon you. Now seek to apprehend the teaching contained in suffering. Perhaps now you will be able to mend in pain and grief the sinful behavior you indulged in while your previous state of self-satisfaction and pseudo-happiness. So that's Rabbi Soloveitchik's response to God's answer, saying you missed the point, but this is how you have to do it. All you have to do is repair what you've done, get involved with the community, stop being so selfish, egotistical, even though you offered up your sacrifices, even though you gave charity, even though you did what you did it for egotistical reasons. And that's wrong. You didn't care about the community. You were just, here's a halacha, I'm doing my halachic bit, but I'm not really doing anything more than that. There's no chesed involved in that. It's totally egotistical. That's what I said. He's really hitting us up. Because how many of us will just follow the halacha, the letter of the law, but we don't get involved in anything else. We don't want to hear about it. I did what I had to do. Leave me alone. You can't punish me. No, he's saying if you don't feel what we're supposed to get, that namely that we're all Kol Yisrael Ravens Ebezer, we're all guarantors for one another, you've missed the point. And now he's going to end this off and watch what he does with it. It's beautiful what he does. Again, I invite everybody to read the book of Job, but you'll see what happens here. He said, God addressed the friends of Job. And remember, they had all tried to defend God and impugn Job. That's what they tried to do. So God addressed the friends of Job, and he says, now therefore, take unto you 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go unto my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. That's the response. Because what happened was God says, you unjustly impugned his integrity. You were wrong with it. He was a perfect guy. You shouldn't have done it. So now do this. I'll give you a way out. I want you to give the bullock. So now again, this is Soloveitchik speaking. He says, behold, why do you demand all that? He says, behold, I will test Job yet again. Let him be scrutinized publicly. Will he now know how to pray for his fellow man, how to share in his suffering? Has he learned anything in this hour of calamity and wrath? Has he properly appropriated a new formulation of prayer, which includes and encompasses the community? If he pleads on your behalf, then both he and you will be redeemed. For him, as it says in Job, for him I will accept. Then you will know that Job has been delivered from the straits of egoism and has entered into the wide expanses of sympathy with the community and the solidarity with one's fellow man, that his sense of detachment has disappeared and his place of true spirit of communion has emerged. The great miracle happened. A great miracle occurred. Job suddenly grasped the true nature of Jewish prayer. In a moment, he discovered its plural form. He described the attribute of chesed, which sweeps the individual from the private to the public domain. He began to live the life of the community, to feel his griefs, to mourn over its calamities, and to rejoice in his happiness. The afflictions of Job found their true rectification when he extricated himself from his fenced-in confines, and the divine wrath abated. As it says, and the Lord turned to the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. So when, according to Rabbi Soloveitchik, when Job had finally got the point, and he prayed on behalf of his friends, then he finally understood chesed. And at that point, Hashem forgave him and them. And he rewards him, according to the rabbis, with a second lease on life. He had lived, all these things happened when he was 70. He should have died at 70. He gets a whole nother life. He lives another 70 years. That's why he lives 140 years. That's what they want to argue. So we see here a very interesting approach to Job. That he had to learn a lot of things, even though it says that he was a perfect man, right? If you go to the beginning of the book, perfect man, he was doing everything wonderful. God was praising him. And then suddenly in the end, when he is so arrogant to say, why you do this to me? That's when Hashem comes out and says, where were you? You have no right to ask that question. I gave you something, and again, Rabbi Soloveitchik goes on this to say that because you didn't show your caring for your fellow man. You once in a while you gave a nice thing, But otherwise, when we felt it here in America, when you had your what's it, jars, when you got together this thing for Israel, when we got that whole rally for Israel, when the Federation got the rally for Israel, that's when we finally felt the pain of our brothers in Israel. When we showed it publicly, we said we have to do something. And so we did whatever we could. Okay, we sent the money, but we all got together in a public arena by the Morris and certainly by the semi-private, semi-public, by the Federation. But nonetheless, we did that, and we were saying, okay, Hashem, enough already. We're together. We're one big family. But that was another thing that he was looking for. He was saying, if you can empathize, sympathize, however you want to do with those people, with your brethren, and pray for them, and instead of just yourself, that's what I want. And that's why sometimes the suffering has to come upon you, to know that what you're doing wrong. And it's mida connected mida. Okay? So that's what he does with Job. And now on to us. He's going to go missing the point. Now we're missing the moment. So he says, now as well, we are living in troubled times. By the way, as we read it, you're going to think nothing's changed. He wrote this, like I said, many years ago. Now as well, we are living in troubled times, in days of wrath and distress. We have been the victims of vicious attacks. We have been stricken with suffering. During the last 15 years, we have been afflicted with torments which are unparalleled in the thousands of years of exiles, oppression, and religious persecution. This era of suffering, this dark chapter in our history, did not come to an end with the establishment of the State of Israel. Even now, today, the State of Israel still finds itself in a crisis situation, fraught with danger, and we are all filled with fear and trembling regarding the fate of the Yishuv, the settling of Israel, of the struggling Jewish community in the land of Israel. We are witnesses to the rising star of the wicked and the international perversion of justice derived from the indifference of the principles of righteousness and equity exhibited by the states of the West. Everyone flatters our enemies and adversaries. They all grovel before them in a display of hypocrisy and cacophony of the worst order. I just had to remember how to say that. Everyone, you understand cacophony? Everybody knows what that means? Okay. So everyone seeks their well-being while they treat our beleaguered and fragile Yishuv in the same manner as a wealthy man who stole the little ewe lamb from his poor, weak, and helpless neighbor. The well-known metaphysical problem arises yet again, and the sufferer asks, why do you show me your iniquity and behold mischief? For the wicked does beset the righteous, therefore right goes forth perverted. However, as we emphasized earlier, God does not address himself to this question, and man receives no reply concerning it. The question remains obscure and sealed outside the domain of logical thought. For, as the Torah says, you cannot see my face, for man shall not see me and live. When the impulse of intellectual curiosity seizes hold of a person, he ought to do naught but find strength and encouragement in his faith in the Creator, vindicate God's judgment, and acknowledge the perfection of his work. The rock, his work is perfect, for all his ways of justice, it says in Deuteronomy. If we wish to probe deeply and to question profoundly during a period of nightmarish terrors, then we have to pose the question in halachic form and ask, what is the obligation incumbent upon the sufferer deriving from the suffering itself? That's all. What's my chiyuv? What's my obligation? What commanding voice, what normative principles arises out of the afflictions themselves? Such a question, as we stated above, has an answer, which finds its expression in a clear halachic ruling. We need not engage in metaphysical speculation in order to clarify the law of the rectification of evil. It is not in heaven, it says in Deuteronomy. If we should succeed in formulating this teaching without getting involved in the question of cause and telos, then we will attain complete redemption. And the biblical promise, take counsel together, and it shall be brought to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for Hashem is with us, shall be fulfilled with regard to us. Then, and only then, will we rise from the depths of the Holocaust, possessed of a heightened spiritual stature, and adorned with even more resplendent historical grandeur. As is written, also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before, double, both in quality and in quantity and in quality. The teaching of the rectification of suffering, when it is put into practice, demands of the sufferer both courage and discipline. He must find within himself and draw upon prodigious resources and subject himself to rigorous self-examination and self-evaluation, untainted by the slightest hint of partiality or self-indulgence. He must contemplate his past and envisage his future with complete and unwavering honesty.
If he has to evaluate himself the way that God evaluated him before, I don't see how it's even possible for a human being to find every level of fault. One would just have to assume that I'm at fault because what God did. Oh, sure, I can find anything wrong with you. I mean, because it's such a level. This is what I was looking for. So when we talk about in the Mr. Swine that okay, I have to look within myself. If I find nothing wrong, now how do you feel the Gemara? If I find nothing wrong with me, then obviously it's a ava. Right. How do you get that? According to Job, if Job was such a great guy and he had all these things wrong with him, obviously I'll never get that point.
No, but he could. Once he opened his mind to say, oh, I have to pray on other people's behalf. It's like it goes to the story of Abraham. What happened with Abraham? Avimelech took his wife, took Sarah, right? So Avimelech did, it's tshuva, as it were. Yeah. And he said, oh, I didn't know. If I would have known, I would have touched her. Good old Avimelech. And so what does God say to him? Return the wife, and the prophet will and his husband will pray for you. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you'll die. Well, part of that equation was Avram has to pray for him. Sarah said, no, I won't forgive you. That's straight text. I won't forgive you. No. Avram, on the other hand, said, okay. He prayed for him. He gave, and think about it, if God forbid somebody would take your loved one and would endanger them, you're going to suddenly pray on their behalf? You're not going to. You said, jump in the lake. I don't need you. But Avram was of such a level that he understood he had to pray on his behalf. So same thing with Job. If I have all the world's resources at my fingertips, why don't I care about the others, these people? When it's an injustice, pure injustice. Why aren't I getting involved? I had the ear of Pharaoh. Could have said to him, Pharaoh, it's not cool. It's not right what you're doing. But he remained quiet because dual citizenship, dual loyalty, whatever it was. He didn't want to be put in with that category. I mean, yes, Soloveitchik had some nice words there, but it's and maybe it's true. Why don't we all speak up? Why is it that the Jews of America, when we're in those positions of power, don't speak up? It takes an AIPAC to speak up. But when we have those positions of power, and that's why a lot of things happen, they said the Jewish lobby is gone. When I think it was some jets weren't sold to Israel or something. It was a long time ago. But we didn't speak up as a group. We didn't say, how can you do that? We were quiet. We had our own Dalai We weren't interested. We feel bad for Israel. We hope it works. Nice experiment. Whatever. But we didn't speak up as a group. And again, we don't have to look far. And if not for the Kiruv movement, and this awakening of what we have to do, that we're all connected, how many of the Frum people really will get involved with the Fry? And how many of the Fry will get involved with the Frum, saying we're all brothers, bridging the gap? Who bridges the gap? It's a nice thing to talk about, but in reality, I don't see it happening. And not just in South Bend, but all around. We all know we have to work together. We don't, but give me a break. We don't.
Okay.
So I'm saying if that would take that and say we have to work on that. And it's always Mida Connected Mida, by the way. It's never a matter of not Mida Connected Mida. And if it's a matter of that I've checked everything out and this does, and that's what the Gemara is saying in Brachot. If I had something happen to me and I Mida Connected Mida, tit for tat. So if I searched out and there was nothing in that I knew that would fill that Mida Connected Mida, then I can say it's Ahava. That God just wants to get me to the next level. Fine. But are we really willing to exhaust that and to say that I can learn nothing from it? He's saying, ask from a halakha point of view. Don't ask the question of why, what purpose was it? That's all he's saying. Ask a halachic question. What's my chiyuv here? What do I have to learn from this? What am I supposed to get from it? That's all. And answer that question without any prejudice, without saying, I'm a tzaddik. You may very well be a tzaddik. He's not going to argue not a tzaddik. But then there's Ava. But how many of us, even according to the Gemara, are going to get to a level to say that we're all tzaddikim? And this is all Ava. We can normally find something we did wrong. And then we have to improve on that. The best thing I said to somebody recently, that when you go on the Yom Kippur Machzor from Artskro, they go through the Hashamnus and then the Al-Chetz. I suggested, and I really should take my own advice. I'll be quite honest. I'm taking my own advice. But if we would just go through each one of those, Hashamnu, Bagadnu, take that and work on it for 1 week. The Hashamnu, whatever Hashamnu is, work on that 1 week. See, what am I doing? By the end of the year, you would be a changed person if we took it seriously. And we say, okay, this is what Hashem, we're guilty. That's what Hashem means. We're guilty. What does that mean? Take the first Al-Chet and really say, just use Art Scroll's definitions, because they give you a lot of mush from the back of the book. Just use that and try to improve yourself. We all know that we need that improvement, but we all sit back and say, yeah, Rosh Hashanah is a little while away yet. Yom Kippur is even further. I have time. I have to worry about Pesach now. I have to get rid of all the chametz. I don't have time for this. But really, if we would all do that, continually work on ourselves, like the Muslim books say, like he's suggesting, maybe Hashem wouldn't have to throw these things at us. Or when he does, then maybe we could say to him with a clear conscience, Baruch Hashem, thank you for the Ava. Don't, as the Gemara says, don't love me so much. I don't need neither the love nor the affliction, as the Gemara says. But okay, if we can actually say that, that's to our benefit. But what he's presenting is, we're nowhere near there yet. And I think that we have to be honest with that. So when something happens to us, again, we have to look at it and say, Mida Keneged Mida, what is this? Not some strange thing that, I didn't say a bracha, and that's why Hashem is causing me to whatever. It has no connection? No, I'm not going to put those two together.
Like the journey of a tzaddik.
Right.
As you reach these higher levels, the test is, if you start to take pride in that, like Job did,
Right.
and you start to become arrogant, you're making yourself into a god. That as you reach the higher level, you should be becoming more humble.
Correct. So what Job would have argued with you is I never got arrogant. I was perfect. God testifies he's an Ish Tam, a perfect man. You can't get any better than that. So, by the way, if I'm pretty sure it says Ish Tam, a perfect man, as compared to Ish Tamim. And we learned about Yaakov that when he was an Ish Tam, he wasn't quite perfected yet. He had to go through the fight of the Malach before it's called Tamim, which means that's when he becomes the Ish Emet, and so on and so forth. That's when he, Yaakov, I should say. That's when he becomes the Ish Emet. When he finally struggles with that last struggle, that's when he becomes the good guy. The total Tamim. So each Tam, according to that definition, I forget who says it, but each Tam at that point means I'm a work in progress. So if you take that to Job, that drasha to Job, it could be, yeah, he's a perfect man at his level, but there's still a work in progress. This is why Rabbi Soloveitchik could go on that sort of harangue against him. We'll have to stop here.
There's always another level.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much. Oh, it's still light outside.